Welcome to the Accidental Trainer, a podcast where you'll hear firsthand stories and tips on how to start and grow your training career.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of ATD Accidental Trainer. Welcome to 2025. I am so excited to be chatting with our guest today. Juliana Sawaia is a happiness at work scientist and researcher with over 20 years experience specializing in corporate happiness. Hi, Juliana.
Hi, Alexandria. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Can you tell our listeners where are you joining us from today?
Yes, I'm joining from São Paulo, Brazil.
And I just had a realization moment talking with Juliana that it is not cold and dark and dreary right now where she is. It's just wonderful. Or maybe it's not wonderful, but it's very warm. It's very hot, the hottest time of the year for her. So we were talking about January blues and she doesn't have those, which is great. Great for our conversation today because we're talking about happiness. It is important. And even that fostering happiness may be imperative, like absolutely critical as a business strategy in today's workplace. So I am so excited that you are going to be filling us in on all of that. But before we explore that topic, let's chat about your origin story.
Yes, of course. So happiness has always been a topic of deep interest to me. So what was accidental in my journey was how a sense of misalignment led me to an entirely new fulfillment path. So as an executive with over 20 years of experience, particularly in technology and measurement, I was excelling in roles that didn't resonate deeply with my sense of purpose. It wasn't something that I planned, but this discomfort sparked me my curiosity about the science of happiness. So what started as a personal exploration turned it into a professional transformation. So this realization led me to dive deeper into the science of happiness. Through my studies, I discovered that I could blend my technical expertise and leadership experience with my passion for happiness to help organizations to cultivate more meaningful and sustainable workplace culture. So this journey, Alexandria, has allowed me to align my personal values with my professional contributions, creating meaningful impact for individuals and organizations. So I'm really happy about these decisions I made and how I'm moving forward to this new journey in my career.
Gosh, I wonder how many people are listening and wishing that they were, or maybe they'll be inspired to pursue happiness as part of their professional endeavors and not just a personal curiosity. I am so excited to chat about happiness, and maybe we can do some context setting first. So one thought that I had that you can help clarify, it was just when we're talking about happiness, you call yourself like a corporate happiness specialist. Do you differentiate between what is just general happiness and what it means in terms of organizational strategy purposes?
Yeah, very good starting point. So first, it is important to say that happiness, it's not something that you simply find. I mean, you are not just walking on the street and you see happiness as a rainbow. So happiness is something you must cultivate from an individual perspective or for a professional perspective. It's something that you need to cultivate. And I like to say that happiness is an ongoing state of fulfillment that is cultivated when we have the autonomy to make meaningful choices that reflect our essence. And essence here means like our values, our beliefs. So every time that we are able to drive or to make meaningful choices and decisions that reflect who we are closest to happiness as a concept. And in the concept of happiness at work, meaning and purpose are fundamental here. And meaning involves like exercising your talents and skills in a direction that holds the greatest significance for you. And purpose is about putting the meaning into action to create impact and contribute to something greater. So when we connect with our sense of meaning and align it with purposeful contribution, happiness becomes a natural outcome. So this connection empowers us to live authentically and to thrive both personally and professionally.
It's interesting that you said that, because I feel like when people talk about engagement, like employee engagement, there's a similar strategy there, that if you're helping employees to cultivate and foster the purpose, ensuring that they have a purpose and that they do find meaning in their work, that in turn can help with engagement. But I know that engagement and happiness are not necessarily the same thing, because I imagine you could be engaged, but maybe still pursuing more. And maybe it's because I'm thinking of like joyful happiness. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a great point that you brought, because engagement can be an ingredient for happiness at work. The science shows like different ingredients that we can use, but one that I like most are three, like engagement, job satisfaction, and affective commitment. Those are the three main ingredients that can make happiness more measurable in the field of happiness at work. And when we mention like engagement in this context that you brought, like we can say that when people are exercising their talents and skills in the direction that are meaningful for them, probably they are going to be more engaged at work. And a way to do that is through job crafting. So job crafting, it's a concept that I really like to bring here in the happiness field, because it can allow us somehow to start exercising our skills in a direction that sometimes is not, like position that will give us everything that we need, but somehow will put us in motion to start exercising how to make it more possible. So in this context, I would say that job crafting can help on the engagement. And of course, a lot of other things that we are going to discuss later during our chat here.
Okay, so let's help build the case. I know you have lots of cool stats here, just helping us understand more of this science of happiness. Some of your background, you've done research in this space. I know you're really fond of a lot of the research out there. So what exactly is it? Why is it important for work? What's the impact for work?
First of all, the science of happiness, we can say that is an interdisciplinary field of studies that combines insights from positive psychology, neuroscience, and behavioral science in order to understand what drives well-being, fulfillment, and positive emotions in the workplace. So in the workplace context, the science has a profound impact because research shows, for example, that happy employees are more productive, more creative, more collaborative, and better at problem solving. We have plenty of data supporting this idea. So they build stronger relationships, they contribute to positive team dynamics, and are less likely to experience burnout and turnover. However, the global deterioration of mental health is concerning. Just for you to have an idea, and our listeners here, in the 2024 State of Global Workplace report by Gallup, data shows that global employees' well-being declined from 35% to 34%. When we think about a global perspective, this 1% decline, this 1% decline, it's like a lot. It means a lot. And these challenges are reflected in the negative emotions experienced regularly. For example, half of US workers reported feeling stress every day. 21% feel sadness, 18% feel loneliness, and 17% feel anger. From one side, the science shows the positive impact of happier employees. And on the other hand, we have mental health deterioration. So when organizations foster happiness by promoting psychological safety, offering opportunities for meaningful work, for example, when recognizing contribution, they create a culture where people thrive. So this is not enhances individual well-being, but also drives sustainable business outcome, such as high employee retention, and many other indicators. So in the essence, understanding and applying the science of happiness at work transforms organization into environments where both people and business flourish.
I hear that you're starting to give really concrete examples, which is cool. As our amazing ATD community and listeners. They're the change makers out there making this happen in their organization. Maybe it's their task to kind of create more happiness and foster more happiness for these positive outcomes. So I just want to make it really concrete, the question, what role does happiness play in learning and development, and how can cultivating joy improve business outcomes?
I love this question. So happiness plays a vital role in learning and development. And as a L&D professional, I can say that when people are happy, their brains release chemicals like dopamine and serotonin, which boost their ability to observe and apply new information, which is all we need right now, right? Because we need their attention. We need the retention rise. So as supported by one of my favorite studies developed by Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, the broaden and build theory suggests that positive emotions like joy, for example, broaden our thinking, enhancing creativity, problem solving, and openness to new ideas. So over time, this broadened perspective creates an ideal environment for effective learning and professional development. So prioritizing happiness within learning and development strategy creates a cycle of growth and resilience, empowering both employees and business to thrive.
Wow, that's cool. It's making me think of the big 5 personality archetypes, and openness is one of them. You said broadening our perspective, that if you're not naturally inclined to be open to all of these new ideas, and especially in this really rapidly changing environment where change just seems like it's happening faster than we can keep up, that focusing on happiness and cultivating it might help as a strategy for dealing with all of that. And not to mention some of the other ones that you were just mentioning before, which I found to be fascinating: collaboration, innovation, which I think maybe ties in with that openness or taking on a broader perspective. Same thing with problem solving, productivity though, even. So really cool. Our listeners probably are already bought in, but when they are talking to stakeholders or someone who has more decision-making power and they're trying to build a case, I always love to hear our guests have these talking points and share them so that they can just hand this recording over to their manager if they need to, or whoever it is, so that then they can jump into the how and start doing it. So let's say that our listeners, they want to boost happiness. How do they go about doing it? Do you have recommendations for practical steps that L&D teams take to foster happiness and engagement within their organizations?
Yes, of course. Obviously, it's not an easy path because happiness is a broad topic. Happiness is very subjective. We need to connect it to business strategy. But I can say that first, it is important to highlight that happiness should be treated as a core component of the business strategy with clear goals and measurable indicators. Begin by implementing tools to access employee well-being, such as surveys or pulse checks, to gather actionable insights. So using this data to identify gaps, designing target interventions, and tracking process over time will help you to support the use cases. So ensuring well-being metrics are as important as other performance indicators helps align the happiness with organization success. So this is the very first step. The second step is invest in training programs for leaders to understand the importance of their role in fostering a culture of happiness at work. Data show, and I spent 2 years studying the influence of leadership on employees' happiness. So data shows that leaders influence up to 70% the happiness in the workplace. And one of the main mechanisms I would highlight is psychological safety. So when leaders from all levels embody and champion these principles, they inspire others, creating a ripple effect of positivity through the organization. So by integrating happiness in both strategy and leadership development, L&D team can spread a transformation where well-being becomes a foundational for sustainable growth and success.
So just a 2-step process?
Yes, I would say, of course. And then when you have like these metrics and you have the data in place, like you can start building any and many other initiatives because you are going to have the buy-in, you are going to have the results, and then you can start developing a program, corporate happiness program, which then you can define some pillars to activate, you can define different teams to activate, and then there are many initiatives you can put in place. But I think that these two are the foundational for you to build upon.
Can you help talk us through an example of maybe a pretend or sample organization? They've done some surveys, they've identified some gaps. Let's say it's psychological safety, if that's what we're meaning. And let's say that their goal is that they want to be more innovative. And I'm just making this up just because I think it'd be fun. They've talked to their leaders, like what happens next? How are they designing the right conditions and environment to create these more joyful, happy workplaces? What do those initiatives start to look like?
I have one client here in Brazil that is Heineken. Of course, you know Heineken as well, the beer. And what Heineken did here was like implementing this happiness team in the or as part of the HR community. So they have a team totally focused on happiness. And what happens is that this team, at the same time they are with the HR, they are very connected to the CEO of Heineken. So they are kind of sit on the board and making actionable steps and somehow measuring those steps connected to the business strategy. So what they did is that they defined the very first pillars that they would activate. And I know that leadership training was one of them. So first, of course, they were educating the leaders, educating the team, creating some ambassadors of the topic, like to spread, because of course the team it's small and they need to multiply their effect. By training the leadership and focusing on specific mechanisms, for example, the psychological safety, they were able to start moving to other topics and making progress in this area. So right now they are in the place that the entire company is educated. They are benchmark for the other Heinekens around the world because the program is doing really well. The numbers are increasing, the happiness numbers, and they have different ways to measure it based on PERMA from Martin Seligman, the positive psychology structure that they use. And using the PERMA structure, they are measuring and tracking the numbers and connecting to the business strategy as well. So it's a very good example on how it's working on practice.
Will you repeat that tool that they're using to measure happiness, just in case our listeners are not familiar with that?
Of course, it's an acronym for PERMA from Martin Seligman.
Can include it in the show notes, something if folks are curious. I love that you gave an example with an actual client that you're working with, that they have a whole devoted happiness team. I am imagining for some folks that what might be more realistic with their size and resources and time is maybe they start a happiness task force. Maybe it's still a team, but maybe it doesn't all live in HR and they still have all of their other duties and it's more of a pilot project type of thing. Can you help chat through common challenges, common barriers to designing, creating, or maintaining joyful workplaces? And sorry to pile on, but also, can L&D help address those issues?
Yes, of course. That's why having the buy-in of leadership is so important. Because if you are in a very small team and you just want to implement a happiness program out of the blue, you will not get the resources and you will not be able, for instance, to get the support for ambassadors on your program. But when you have the buy-in of the leaders and the buy-in you are going to get with the right numbers, showing the connection with the business, it's much more easy for you to thrive or to prove that a program like this can work. Because it takes time to make a program, because you need to track, you need to get the results, you need to understand what these results mean, you need to come back. It's a test and learn process. It's not just one size fits all or just one shot and everybody is going, to operate or to behave in a different way. That's why it takes time, and the buy-in is so important.
I remember asking you about this before in another conversation, and I feel like it's a good place to ask here. Can you tell us examples? Because having the metrics is going to be hard, right? What are examples of the vanity metrics, the shallow ones that aren't really meaningful or impactful, versus the more impactful ones? It's always easier to gravitate towards the ones that are just easy to report on, but those tend to be the vanity metrics. What does that look like in the case of measuring joyful workplaces or happiness in your workplace? Can you help differentiating piece?
From the happiness piece, we can have some metrics around the well-being, right? How the employees are feeling today, for example, and measure it every single day and see how they are feeling, what kind of emotions they are experiencing in the workplace, how happy they are, which is a question that we can build as a ladder structure, like from 1 to 10, how happy are you? And keep measuring the overall satisfaction. Combine it like with engagement, affective commitment, and job satisfaction as well. So these are the happiness metrics that are possible. And we have many of them. Then in another side, you have metrics related to the business, which are performance, innovation. Then you can start identifying how people are performing, and then you can start crossing those numbers. Another possibility are the HR metrics, like, for example, absenteeism. Are people getting more health license because they are not feeling well, how the mental health are going, and then you start combining. Each company has their own metrics. It's important just to understand how you can combine and how you can ensure at the same time confidentiality, because those indicators are very sensitive. And then you need to make sure that you are looking to the company as a whole and not just, focusing on one person. It can be personal. But is it possible for you to start combining buckets of metrics, even like with the leadership performance, psychological safety indicators, for example? Then you can have it and put all together to start combining and understanding the landscape in a zoom out perspective.
That's one thing that I've heard can be a challenge is when you're trying to make that case and show those metrics that there's maybe correlative data, but it's hard to specifically say this is causation. So how do you find those metrics? How do you make that case? Like going back to our made up example where we said this company was looking for innovation when they started doing a leadership program to help them buy in to happiness, and they want to do happiness initiatives, and they start working on it in their organization. How can they definitively say they are becoming more innovative? They've been able to, create new products that are important towards their business strategy, and that this happiness initiative played a part, a significant part, even caused that to happen?
Yeah, it's a very important question. So I think correlation in this case, it can be a very good starting point because it can show some trends for you to pay attention to. I mean, it's not going to bring definitive answers, but it's going to show some trends that can help you to make better decisions as the programs evolve. So I think this is a very good starting point. Look, what is correlated to what? What is important to correlate in relation to what? And then you can start building your roadmap for activation, or even to analyze more deeply and to start making better decisions. Another point is the causation. Causation is more tricky because it's really hard for you to define a causation if you are not going to measure in a case study, for example. And then you should have your control group versus your test group, and then start defining. In this case, for example, if we start with correlation, you are going to see some trends. And then for those trends, you can choose just one single area for you to start activating in a case study to evaluate the causation, for example. And then you go to a case study, evaluate a team for a test and control group, and then you can have a very reliable number to prove your assumptions. But again, causation is much more complicated. It takes time, it takes money, resources, everything. So I would say that starting with the correlation and understanding what matters most will give you a lot of insights for you to work already.
Maybe this is related where it's like starting smaller by starting with correlation. Are there certain types of initiatives that you see companies start with to sort of get those wins under their belt and then move on bigger? Is that applicable in this space of creating more happiness?
It is. And I think the HR metrics are the best. I'm talking about the HR metrics like absenteeism or the performance indicators. They are good because most of the time the happiness teams or L&D are much more closer to HR. They are kind of correlated areas. So it's easy for you to get these numbers going around. It's different from getting a number from the sales team, for example. Sometimes companies work in silos and it's going to be easy to break it and to get the numbers and, to make evaluation. And so it's easier when you are on HR metrics. So the low-hanging fruits for HR metrics can help you to start supporting those trends and start having these use cases.
For folks who are listening, do you have strategies if people are feeling stressed out right now and they're looking for some of that low-hanging fruit, those opportunities to boost happiness right now, today?
Yes, let's talk like individuals right now, right? Because at the end, we are all workers. We are all facing our own challenges. And I would say two, they are my favorites. And if you would be able to implement at least one of them, probably you are going to be happier at the end of 2025. So the first one, prioritize your relationships, including paying attention to the relationship you have with yourself. So it has been scientifically proven that human connections are the primary source of happiness. And the more meaningful and strong your support network are, the greater the chances of cultivating happiness in your day by day. So write down a list of people that are energizing to you and you should see more often. Put them on your list or on your to-do list. And as you do with your relevant tests, what happens is that every beginning of the year we put, okay, I would like to learn another language. I would like to do an MBA or whatever, but you don't put, I would like to strengthen my relationship with people that energizes me most. Because the reality is we have a lot of people that drain our energy. We spend a lot of time trying to solve or to fix people that drain our energy instead of putting time on people that energizes us. So we need to be fueled to deal with this kind of challenges that we have. So the first is like this, prioritize your relationship. And with yourself, pay attention on the negative messages that you are sending to yourself because it takes space. And in order to cultivate happiness, you need to have blank spaces. We need to have spaces to operate. So this is the first one. The second one is savor what you have and celebrate your progress. Most of the time we celebrate your success instead of celebrate your progress, which are different. So a major obstacle to happiness is confusing happiness with success. Happiness is rooted in who we are and what we offer, and it is brought by progress. Success is often defined by what we have and what we represent, is our achievements. So the challenges arises when we place excessive pressure on achieving rather than progressing. However, progress is happening all the time. Progress is happening today, so it's more frequent and accessible. If we take time to notice the progress, we can adjust the high of our bar, focusing on our unique journey and embracing running our marathon. So happiness lies in recognizing and celebrating the step forward, no matter how small. So that's why gratitude, for example, is so important. And we talk a lot about gratitude connected to happiness. But what happens in practice is that because it rewires our brain by counteracting negative bias, it releases like dopamine, serotonin, and reinforces neural pathways. So it trains our brain to notice and appreciate incremental progress in challenges situation. At the end, it's just about like having energizing people to keep your tank full and then celebrating your progress instead of just focusing on your success. Progress is happening every day.
I like this. I know that you said we're talking about individual happiness for a moment, taking a step away from corporate happiness. So I think you could apply these two ideas, these specific examples, to your work to improve your individual happiness in your workplace. And maybe this has sort of a ripple effect in terms of the culture and the way that people show up with each other. The first one, just seeing people who energize you more often and maybe protecting your time a little bit more from the people who drain you. I feel even just creating a rhythm of just setting up time. I don't need to see you because we're not working on this project, but maybe we can set up some type of rhythm where we get to just like check in and it's just a dedicated time to chat. I know I have a few of those set up with people I work with that are so great. And the whole point is just to see them and chat so that then when we're in a meeting and we don't get time to chat and see how we're doing, we're just talking about the work stuff. That's okay because we maybe had space and time for that somewhere else. But then I was thinking your second one about savoring what you have, celebrating progress. I think that's one of those go-to, like if you asked anyone off the street to come up with like, how do you improve happiness? That might be what they say is like focus on gratitude, but maybe knowing that versus how you actually put that into practice. I'm curious what that sort of looks like for people. I've seen sort of a rhythm of you say 3 different gratitudes. You write them down each day. I'm curious, though, from your perspective, if you've seen that different ways that people put that into practice, if you have examples or recommendations. I think there's 2 there of your second strategy here, right? The savor what you have and celebrate progress. Now, I'm thinking about my daughter right now because I just had a baby. So it's very easy to celebrate progress like every day because she's just so small. So she's always like doing something kind of different and new. We're doing the journal where you just write 1 line each day. And that's sort of perfect because we could capture sort of a new milestone that happened and you start to see what's evolved just from the day to day. It might not look like a lot, but from week to week or month to month, huge differences. But that's just like the fun individual stuff. I'm still sort of thinking, how do you put this back into a workplace setting? So recommendations for what it might look like to savor what you have at work and to celebrate progress at work. Maybe it's just in a meeting, but I'm going to stop talking and pass it back over to you.
It's great because we are building this together. So the first on the savoring what you have, like the gratitude works really well because what this gratitude initiative do, it's like making it become a ritual, right? And rituals are really important when we are talking about cultivation. What is the essence of cultivating something? It's like to be there, to be present, to make it consistent. And when we think about the gratitude, they say we can write down 3 things that we are really grateful for, which is one of those strategies. You can start like just being grateful as you wake up, like you wake up every morning and you can start in this ritual appreciating your moment just on waking up. There is no a regular number. The most of the studies like used to use like the 3 things, but I write down every night. I have this happiness jar for 8 years now. And every night I put a Post-it and I write it down 1 thing that really makes my day on that day. At the end of the year, I open my happiness jar and I can threads of, great things that happen. And sometimes it's just like talking to a friend. And most of the time you are going to see that things that brings you happiness are really, really simple to achieve. We are not talking about winning an Oscar. we are talking about talking to a friend or like participating in a podcast like this one. You probably, Alexandra, is going to be on my happiness jar today because it's a very important progress to me. English is not my first language. It's the first podcast that I participate in English. So, it's really challenging. So this is one example. You can start writing down 3 things. You can just wake up and just make this mentalization of gratitude in your day, or you can have a post-it note and start writing and having this. Other thing that you brought is about celebrating the progress. In case of the progress, it's important for you to write down what areas you'd like to improve. What areas is like on your work, on your personal life, is in your physical or mental health or whatever. And you start talking what progress looks like. Sometimes the progress is just for you to wake up and go to work. It's just to be present. Sometimes the progress looks like just walk around 5 minutes. That's why it's so huge, because we celebrate when you run a marathon, right? But a marathon is made sometimes for you walking for 5 minutes. So don't pay attention on the finish line of the marathon, but the steps that you are giving every day, because they are going to make the difference.
First of all, it's so cool, the idea of writing something down and then putting it in a place, because you sort of connected them as well. Then you're able to, in the moment, savor throughout the year, and then you've dedicated a specific time to celebrate the progress. So maybe it's not always the things that you're grateful for are progress, but maybe they are as well, because you'll be able to see things that you were grateful for and you're like, wow, come a long way from what I was grateful for in January.
And one more thing that I really like to do is write down letters for my future self. The Future Me website, it's very great because you can go there and write letters for your future self. So I write letters to my future self all the time, like in a 3 months period, 6 months period, 1 year period, 5 years period, doesn't matter. Every time I'm getting back these letters from the future, and they are a very good indicator on how I'm doing well. I got this letter these days from 3 years ago when I was just starting my career transition officially. And it was so great to see the things that I was talking to myself about this period, because it wasn't easy to be an executive in a tech company and shift my career and, change my identity and, start performing in another skin. And when I wrote this letter, it was so special to see that, yes, I made a progress. And where I am today was a decision based on something that my past self did, on actions that my past self did. So what I can do today to my future self, because your future self depends on what you are doing today, the decisions that you are making, the people that you are relating, who you are being.
I'll make sure I have that website down so we can include it in our show notes. That is just so fun. I love that it's the beginning of the year. So folks could be writing a letter to their future self a year from now, or even 6 months from now. That would be awesome. Well, before we close up for today, can you share your current learning goals?
Yeah, so my main goals are the scientific publication of my dissertation showing like the influence of leadership on happiness. So I'm working on this right now. And in my book, which is planned to the end of the year. And I'm also looking forward to attend 2 important US conferences, the ATD in US, which is going to be great, and South by Southwest. So yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Wow. Okay, that is so fun. Well, I'm excited to see you in DC in May. I didn't mention it when we started recording, but I got to meet you last year in New Orleans at one of our joy and happiness conversations. And I bookmarked you because I knew, I was like, that will be a great podcast conversation one day. So thanks so much for making the time for us being your first English podcast conversation. I think you were amazing. I know our listeners will think so as well. And where can we keep up with you and your activity?
Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I also have my website, both under my name, Juliana Sawaia. Happy to connect with you all there.
Well, thanks for all of the ideas and insights about creating and fostering happiness, and have a wonderful day.
Yes, for you too. Bye-bye, Alexandria.
Thanks for listening to this podcast from the Association for Talent Development. Be sure to check the show notes for resources mentioned in today's episode. And if you found the show useful or insightful, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with a colleague.